that's egg on my face. My first encounter with the Owl House began partway through Season 1, where the internet, primarily Twitter, was praising the latest episode of the Disney Channel show created by Dana Terrace. This episode saw its main character, Luz Nocera, dancing with her one-time rival Amity Blight in a bid to defeat an evil creature. This was known as the Grom episode, and was the turning point of the series where the rival character officially became the love interest for the main protagonist. Everyone was going crazy, Twitter was exploding, articles were being spun about how amazing of a moment this was. As for me, I was more on the side of, After all, I was still experiencing Cachadora on She-Ra, and while that ship has its fans, I was not one of them.
Hey, Adora.
Incidentally, this caused my first impression of the Owl House to be one of ambivalence. Another overrated ship for another overrated show, I said. Yes, me. The guy who never shut up about the shipping in the Pony Show looked upon the ship in the Owl House with an unimpressed grimace. It wasn't until closer to the end of the first season that I decided to give the Owl House a shot. After all, it was on Hulu, albeit with ads for Rainbow High. Ugh. But the episodes were there, so I figured, what's the harm? Aside from the aforementioned Rainbow High commercials. Rainbow High Salon, can get your color on! Ugh, it still haunts me to my dreams to this very day. Needless to say, saying that I was surprised was an understatement. What I thought would be a mediocre show, I came out of it very much impressed. Even in its second season, the Owl House is funny, imaginative, clever, other words that praise it. The show definitely has lived up to the hype. The show takes a standard premise of an outsider falling into a magical world and does its own thing. Sure, it tackles various fish-out-of-water tropes for a comedic effect, but they are done in a way that still lands in its comedic impact. Its main strength lies in that while Luz is the audience surrogate, who is there to be fed the world building and explanations, she is just as madcap as the others around her, maybe even more so. She's compulsive, acts without thinking, and often lands herself in danger more than she would probably care to admit. It even gets to the point where the other characters around her have to try and control her behavior, which lands them into trouble as well. I suppose if I were to find a slight flaw in this approach, is that it does kind of get to a point where Luz should know better, and that she still maintains this behavior in order to get the show going. I remember the episode where she ends up in detention, where she is told not to touch the crystal ball, but knowingly does so, and suffers the consequences for it. It was one of the few times where I felt the plotting was contrived, even though the episode that followed was still fun. That's not to say that Luz is the worst character and was essentially her own show. I think she's a fun character. But it's one of the few times where I saw some of the seams in the overall plotting. But in a show that takes place in a magical world with all kinds of kooky creatures and characters, the supporting cast has to be at the top of their game for this. And let me tell you, the Owl House has some delightful characters. This includes Luz's friends Gus and Willow, with their fun personalities, relatable problems of trying to be accepted, and their entertaining dynamic with Luz. It's the Harry, Ron, and Hermione dynamic, if Harry was a crazed goblin looking for trouble. In the place of the wise and elderly teacher that teaches the protagonist all they know, is Ida the Owl Lady, who serves as the gateway into the world. Now Ida, she's just great. She's magical, sassy, surprisingly foxy for her age. Not only that, but her overarching storyline is well developed and takes some fun turns as the series goes on. This is excellently contrasted with her sister Lilith, who serves as the main antagonist for much of Season 1 before the bigger bad is introduced later on. While she is working for the villains, there is always something about her that seems sympathetic, as she wants to help Ida with the curse that was afflicted on her years ago. While I don't want to go into too heavy spoilers for people who are interested, this narrative does take a shocking turn that has paid out greatly in the finale, and extends into Season 2. Some of you aren't here for my thoughts on those pesky side characters, nah. You want to hear about the catalyst on my initial hesitance to give the show a chance. You want to know about what I thought of Amity Blight, and the developing shipping feel that followed partway into the first season. Well, you'd be surprised to learn that I thought Amity Blight was good. She starts out as mean and competitive, but what's great is that her initial animosity towards Luz wasn't unfounded. as they meet through circumstances in which Luz helps Willow cheat on her exam. In that respect, Amity is completely in the right for thinking poorly of Luz the first time around, which felt like a fun little subversion of the new kid is actually smarter and more accomplished cliche. If there's one thing that I thought wouldn't surprise me, it's in how they handled the standard rivals turns friends trope. It happens all the time in fiction, where two characters initially don't like each other, but then grow to respect one another during the course of the series, be it film or television. Where the Owl House differentiates itself is in that the rivalry ends not even 5 episodes into the first season, and that Luz and Amity's relationship becomes friendly almost soon after, and Amity herself develops a crush on Luz. This honestly caught me off guard. I've been programmed to think that this type of development wouldn't happen for quite some time. If this was a 26 episode anime series, this would happen around episode 15 or 18, not episode 5. It felt refreshing to see this kind of relationship blossom, and the gradual romance felt cute and not intrusive. One can make the argument that it feels rushed, and there is some part of me that agrees, but I think the writing and energetic nature of the ship makes up for what could be perceived as a lack of buildup. As it stands, The Owl House is a fantastic show. Its pacing is great, its characters are fun, the writing is hilarious and frequently engaging. It manages to poke fun at other fantasy shows and movies in a way that doesn't feel mean-spirited, but as a lighthearted ribbing. I'm sure many fans of Japanese animation will think of the show as an American Little Witch Academia, which isn't entirely unfair. I absolutely adore Little Witch Academia, and if I were to make a choice as to what non-magical girl joins the school of magical people to become a magical girl I consider to be a masterclass of the genre, it would be Little Witch Academia. But The Owl House has its many strengths, and does those strengths well, crafting a series in which I look forward to each episode with anticipation. It's currently in its 2nd season, with a 3rd and final season also coming soon, though in a very much shortened episode count. This is unfortunate, and there are hashtags out there wanting to see a continuation of the series after that, but I am happy that there is an ending planned. After all, it would be disappointing that we get this great series, but then there is no ending and just ends on a cliffhanger. I'm looking at you, Nickelodeon and Netflix. Greenlight Glitch Tech Season 3 now. Anyway. So yeah, The Owl House, great show. Although, you think this would be the end of me underestimating an animated show, but you'd be wrong. We're actually only a third of the way into this video series. The next show is...